Hello everyone, welcome to Task and Purpose, the channel with the mission to bring you ground level insight into the military. I'm your average infantryman, Chris Cappy, and today's episode is all about the British Army Warrior Infantry Fighting Vehicle and its 30mm autocannon. This thing has been blasting its way through the past 5 decades. It's been through multiple extreme environments. I'm talking about the freezing cold of Bosnia to the burning sandbox of Iraq. And through all of these combat zones, it's made sure to have its priorities straight, tea time, every chance it had. Later on in this video, I'm excited to introduce you to our new contributor, Elliot Hearn. He's an actual British soldier, so he'll be able to give us some insight into this vehicle. So why is finding a next-gen replacement for the Warrior so difficult? The Brits have had a rough go of it recently. All their recent attempts have proven to be incredibly costly. So what made the Warrior so unique? And how did it perform under the stress of combat over the past few decades? If you follow me on Instagram, then you already know I'm a former mechanized infantryman, so the Warrior is of particular interest to me. The vehicle originally started off with some preliminary studies ordered by the Ministry of Defense in the late 1960s. So they wanted to replace their old transport, the FV-430, which was a lightly armored, it had relatively puny 50 cal on top. The 1960s and 70s saw most NATO countries using similar transports to the FV-430. Historically, the British Army had never really used many APCs until the post-war 1950s era. So this would be a major tactical change for them. It would require a whole reorganization of their ground forces. So reason number one as to why the Warrior is difficult to replace is that it's highly maneuverable and fast. Put it this way, if the Warrior got into a drag race with the M2 Bradley, it would win every time, hands down. But we'll see in just a minute that no matter how fast you go, it doesn't matter if you can't simultaneously fire your main gun. The British Ministry of Defense picked GKN Defence instead of the Vickers Defence Company to manufacture the Warrior FV-510 vehicle. The initial idea for the vehicle prototype here was for it to weigh 30 tons and be incredibly well armored. But that notion was tossed out the window when they saw what the price tag was going to be. To be fair, it just sounds like the British Army is prioritizing safety the same way I do when I buy a vehicle. One of the major early design flaws was that it didn't have a stabilized turret, so the Warrior actually had to come to a complete stop before they could fire the primary gun. This put them at a huge disadvantage. They also couldn't fire the important armor-piercing fin-stabilized round, which was necessary to knock out advanced armor. GKN was well known for creating the last generation of British Army APCs. GKN traces their roots all the way back to 1759 at the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. Vickers is relatively young, only going back to 1867. The Ministry of Defense released General Staff Requirement 3533, which stated that the vehicle must have the capacity for 10 soldiers, including the driver, gunner, and their supplies, be mobile enough to keep pace with the Challenger 1 main battle tank, have protection against indirect artillery shell bursts and small arms fire, and firepower in the light anti-armor, general support, and air defense roles. This is truly the difference between an armored personnel carrier and an infantry fighting vehicle. Both have the purpose of bringing soldiers safely to the battlefield, but only one of them has a chain gun that's capable of firing anti-armor ammunition. The 50 cal is a big round, sure, but the 30mm cannon can fire munitions that are smarter. They can explode before they hit the target, or they can detonate after penetrating armor. These are capabilities that the 50 cal does not have. The penalty of having the big primary 30mm autocannon on top, though, is that the turret takes up space inside the vehicle hull, so you can carry less soldiers. It weighs a literal ton, and the ammo takes up space as well. But it's worth it for that firepower. The Warrior IFV that they created had a top speed of 46 miles per hour on the road, which is 10 miles per hour faster than the American counterpart, the Bradley. It can keep pace with the main battle tank, the Challenger 2, across some of the most difficult terrain out there, and that's the advantage of having an infantry fighting vehicle with tracks instead of wheels. When it comes to armor, one of the design features was to not have any of those firing ports from the back like you saw with the Russian BMP. It originally had firing ports for their small arms. So they did away with that, which allowed for better protection. The whole armor is welded. It's aluminum design to provide protection against 155mm shell splinters, 14.5mm armor piercing rounds, that's like similar to a 50 cal. The Warrior is able to carry 1 additional seat compared to the Bradley. So they're able to have 7 dismounted soldiers that it can carry. Side note, can someone please tell me who let these lines all over the Warrior? This makes zero sense. This is literally the only IFV not named after a cat. Such a missed opportunity for the Puma marketing team. So a competition began in 2005 to replace the Warrior's outdated turret system. And then in 2008, Lockheed Martin won that contract to replace the turret, and this was all part of the Warrior Capability Sustainment Program. It ended up taking all the way to 2015 for the British Army to finally have a modern stabilized cannon that could lock onto targets while moving. For this next part, we have our new contributor, Elliot Hearn.
Hello, Task and Purpose Army from across the pond. I'm your British host, Elliot Hearn. I spent 12 years in the British Army. You might remember the British Army from such fond memories as 1776 or the War of 1812. The Warrior's primary weapon is a 30mm Radin cannon, which has an effective range of 2,000 meters. On the upside, this is more firepower than the American Bradley's 25mm cannon. On the downside, the original turret didn't have any kind of stabilization and was clip-fed instead of box-fed, like the American and Soviet methods. The result of this was a less accurate weapon with a low rate of fire, and it often jammed. The desert variant, made specifically for Middle Eastern combat, actually runs the smaller Bushmaster 25mm chain gun. It has the added firepower in the form of two-tow anti-tank guided missiles. Kuwait liked what they saw, and they purchased over 200 of these in the mid-1990s. Its secondary weapon is a kind of vehicle sidearm. It's the GPMG 762, General Purpose Machine Gun, or GIMPY as the Brits call it. It's the British version of the American M240. Not really a version, more like an OG because we had it first. In fact, most versions of the Warrior don't come with tow missiles. The idea behind this was that the vehicles would be working alongside tanks who could handle the harder targets, although it was also designed to have javelins carried in the back for the troops to use. Its night fighting offensive capabilities are second to none. Each weapon system comes equipped with the Tails Optronics Battle Group Thermal Imaging, or BGTI. This gives the gunner an 8x zoom at night. It comes with an outstanding communication setup which allows the Warrior to easily communicate and share information with its less mobile companion, the Challenger 2 main battle tank. This combination of firepower and situational awareness makes it very difficult to find a better, cheaper option out there to replace the Warrior, even as it enters its 4th decade of service. Reason number 3 as to why the Warrior is difficult to replace is its historic wartime performance. Warriors have served pretty much everywhere with the British Army ever since entering service. In this section, I want to talk to you a little bit about its battlefield performance. In Bosnia, not only did they act as a great deterrent to any would-be attackers, but they also stood up to the test of when they were attacked. All of the small arms, missiles, RPGs and an anti-tank mine could not destroy any of the Warriors. In the first Gulf War, again, no Warriors were destroyed by enemy action, but a tragic case of friendly fire would see the loss of 2 Warriors and 9 soldiers. During Operation Telik 2004, Iraq the sequel, a convoy of Warriors were travelling to assist a foot patrol that had been ambushed. Along the route the Warriors were taking, they ran up against an improvised roadblock. They didn't realise it, but they just ran up against a well-coordinated ambush. Small arms, RPG fire hit the convoy from all angles and from elevated positions. The lead vehicle was hit 14 times by RPGs at close range. The vehicle commander, vehicle gunner, and some of the troops riding in the back were all injured or knocked out. The soldier who was driving was Private Johnson Ben Harry. Fortunately, he was okay. His driver's sight was smashed, so he popped open the hatch above him, exposing his head and torso to the heavy gunfire all around. While the Warrior was on fire, he managed to turn the vehicle to the right, but it was worried that it would throw off the track after all the explosions it had taken. Luckily it didn't. He saw a point in the roadblock that had a slight gap in it. Using the Warrior to push up against and pry it open, he manages to open it up enough to drive through. As he drove through, the rest of the Warriors followed on behind. Thanks to this act of bravery and driver savviness, the British would lose no Warriors or take any serious casualties in this ambush. I think this story is a great example of even when the Warriors are pinned and outgunned, the survivability and mobility shines through and really shows the calibre of the Warrior. Don't worry if you get ambushed. The Warrior have your back in base in time for tier medals. Speaking of medals, Private Johnson Ben Harry, for this action and a later action, would be awarded the Victoria Cross, Britain's highest award for valour. It's awarded by the Queen herself. It's a shame they never give out awards for guard duty because I'd be up there. Warriors were also deployed to Afghanistan when the British Army needed an armour element to support the troops. With good speed and able to deal with the harsh terrain, the Warrior proved its worth yet again. Some soldiers even said the Taliban were unable to target us because they couldn't get into the same positions as us. The ground was too open and too harsh to move quickly on. Maintenance was also a bit of a drama in Afghanistan, putting considerable wear on the Warriors. But the British Army had multiple vehicles to choose from at this point, and they called upon the Warrior yet again. I think that itself is a testament to what the Warrior can do. Designed for the Cold War, it's pretty much fulfilled every mission it's been called upon to do. Just like most soldiers, getting trained for a specific job and then pretty much doing everything else but that job. I wonder if the Warrior could talk. Would it be proud of its service, or would it be extremely bitter because the recruiter lied to it? Reason number 4 is its potential to be upgraded. Army bigwigs have decided to keep the Warrior in service for longer. The Warrior Capability Sustainment Program. The Warrior is getting a new turret, and in that new turret comes a bigger 40mm cannon. That's right ladies, size does matter. The ammo for the main cannon is now better too. The idea behind this was fewer rounds for the same job. Even the commander's job's getting easier. Rather having to help reload the main gun, he is now burden-free, allowing him to concentrate on commanding the vehicle. Hopefully he can help do the important things like sorting out rations and making the brews. The new system costs £40 million. Frankly, I think the Warrior's biggest crime is never appearing on Grand Tour.
Even though it has been difficult to replace the Warrior, there are a few potential vehicles looking for the job. The IFV that might replace it is called the Ajax. There's still a lot up in the air at the moment with this vehicle. It's currently undergoing testing. Recently, mid-June to 2021, there were reports that all trials involving the Ajax had been suspended. One of my favorite YouTubers, Maximus, made a great video about the Warrior. He was actually in a Warrior for his whole career in the British Army, so make sure you check that video out. So my overall analysis of the Warrior, according to the open source information that we have, is that it's slightly better than the American M2 Bradley in many regards. It can carry 1 extra dismount, it goes at least 10 miles per hour faster, and it's slightly lighter weight. But if you disagree with our thoughts, if you think we missed something in our research, please let us know in the comment section below, because I like debating with you guys down there, and a lot of you are very smart and knowledgeable on these topics. So I'm your host, Chris Cappy, you're watching Task and Purpose, and I'll see you all next week.